First and foremost, I want to thank the sponsors of this episode, Stage 32, Albuquerque the Magazine, for all they do for the community.
It's about having a reason to gather and talk about being creative and remembering that it is absolutely still possible to make a living telling stories, to be able to see the local communities that we wish we could see in person, but still see them.
Going into this, we had been experiencing a pretty big growth spurt over the last year, but now with everybody home, we literally, and this is no exaggeration and no lie, but over the past month and a half, I've heard from over 300 of them that are like, give us something to do.
We are two organizations that merged last year, Cultural Access Washington and Washington State Arts Alliance. Is that we don't just care if cultural or creative people work for nonprofits, we just care that they're working.
There was a lot that could be learned that people in the business space and in the commercial space could learn from folks in the creative space and vice versa.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Filling the Void, the collaboration between the Albuquerque Film and Music Experience and Seattle Film Summit. Today is a very cool show that we're bringing to you, but first we want to thank our sponsors, Real Solutions, it's the airport meet and greet service here in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and Real Renton, Real Renton, which is a nonprofit in Renton, Washington, that helps produce and present the Seattle Film Summit. So really appreciative of the support from both companies this week, and a great topic this week and great guests, casting directors. Everybody in the industry is wondering what's happening with actors, how they're auditioning, what's happening with the pandemic and how it's affecting the casting world. So we have four of the top people in the country with us today. And before we introduce them, I'd like to introduce the co-host this week, the amazing, talented, wonderful, lovely, experienced Genevieve Trainor. You probably recognize her from Seattle and Albuquerque, a recent transplant, or I should say someone who moved back to Albuquerque after living in Seattle and contributing to their media, marketing, film community for several years. Genevieve, so happy to have you with us today.
Thanks, Ivan. I'm really happy to be here with you all. Thanks for joining today. As Ivan mentioned, we have some of the top casting directors in the country on today's episode. We have Imoru on. She's a casting director out of Washington. She also is the president and co-founder of Rebel Cat Productions, and they are in post-production for their inaugural film. It's all those small things with James Faulkner from Game of Thrones and from Downton Abbey. We also have New Mexico's McMaster. She is with 505 Studio Works. She works alongside Jo Edna Bolden, and she has cast numerous big films in the New Mexico area. The short list would be Godless, which she and Jo Edna won an Artios Award for. She's a two-time Artios Award winner. And she's also cast Whiskey Tango Foxtrot, Sicario, No Country for Old Men, and the list goes on and on. From Oregon, we have Cast Iron Studios' Erin Goodman. She's a casting director in the film and television division there. And she has cast film and Grimm, the series Grimm, Librarians, American Vandal, and the movie Wild with Reese Witherspoon, and the list goes on there too. And then last but not least, we have Elizabeth Gable on. She's one of the top extras casting directors in the nation, and she has cast Hell or High Water, Only the Brave, Sicario, The Ballad of Buster Scruggs, and again, the list goes on. I think we probably have hundreds of film and television series between these four, so.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, a lot of productions. So yeah, I'm really excited to get to it, but I wanted to let our audience know, I know a lot of people are tuning in for this. We are going to have 15 minutes at the end of the conversation for audience questions. So Todd, our producer, who's in the background running things, he is going to supply some questions from the audience that we're going to have the casting directors answer. So, Todd, without further ado, Genevieve, should we bring everybody in?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay.
Hi.
Hey, everyone.
Hello. Hello.
Welcome. So nice to meet you over Zoom and filling the void.
Great. Great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you. And I think we are, oh, there's Elizabeth. Hi, Elizabeth.
Hi.
It's really great to see the four of you. We just went through an introduction and just thought we'd get right into it. So our first question would be, what are you all doing right now? What does the day look like for you in this free time? Maybe starting with Nikkei.
It can't be a typical day.
Yeah, not a typical day. Yeah.
Yeah, it's I'm not sure what typical is anymore. I'm actually in the middle of post-production for a movie we produced, All Those Small Things. So I'm involved in that. And sort of lots of procrastination, I will be honest with you. I have a novel still to write. I have 5 screenplays to write, and they don't happen as you think they would when you have all the time in the world. But yeah, I think that's what I'm doing. Just a typical day for me starts with meditation, a cup of tea, lots of reflection, lots of reading about the industry and what's going on. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, thanks, Nikkei.
Yeah.
Marie, what about you?
Gosh, well, I think I'm on the procrastination bus more than anything. But I kind of think that's okay. I've got 2 smallish children at home with me right now, 8 and almost 12. So we're mixing up trying to call, playing Monopoly school and outside time. But there's a lot of video games going on. There's a lot of binge watching TV going on. Personally,
are you watching any shows that you actually produced or that you casted?
We did just finish watching Interrogation, which was amazing.
Nice.
Oh
Yeah,
gosh, I really love that. But as for that, I've lost you guys.
And we still have you here.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Oh good. Oh, there we are. I had dust on my thing. I've been trying really hard just to keep in touch with my actors. So I've been doing a lot of one-on-one sort of things and other classes and type stuff with Genevieve, actually. So that's been good. Just trying to really keep in touch with everyone, keep morale up, as we know things are going to be changing. So I want everyone to still feel like we're all a really collectively part of a really great community. So just want to keep that up.
Yeah, absolutely. Erin, hi.
Hey, how are you?
Good. How are you doing? What's going on with you?
Doing good. Things are. I've also got little kids. I've got a 10-month-old and a 5-year-old, so it's bonker balls around here most of the time. Usually we're kind of out of bed with a shot and the coffee and the quick check on deadline and see what crazy protocols have been proposed today. Checking in with the community. We've done casting on 2 little commercials where talent have all shot in their own homes on their own without a crew. And then trying to get outside and find a little bit of balance and silver lining and all this craziness about it.
Elizabeth, what have you been up to? What are your days looking like right now?
Well, I think it's a combination of everybody's. Try to get up really early and do an early morning walk because my favorite time of day is sunrise. And then I do study and prayer time. And then I am very happy to say I finished my first book. Almost finished the first rewrite on it. And I'm ready to send it out to my friends to tell me how terrible it is. I'm real excited about that. I am keeping in touch with my actors. When we shut down, it's always hard. We pushed really hard. We had a 2,000 people casting call right before we shut down, and so trying to keep up with all those people and saying, this is the status, this is where we are. Don't cut your hair. Don't do this. Don't do that. And just trying to encourage people that we're going to come back, and we're going to come back big, and we're going to come back strong. And I'm excited about that.
I'm glad that you brought that up, that you had a 2,000 person casting call, because my next question for the group is, what were you working on right before everything came to a screeching halt? And, I know Elizabeth has a cool story, and we're going to lead into it, because for this casting call that I knew about, she was saying, oh, we really need kids with long hair. And now I think you're going to have the pick of the litter, because everybody has to stay home and everybody's growing their hair like crazy. So let's start with Elizabeth and kind of work our way backwards. Tell us about the project you were working on, which I know that the entire New Mexico community was excited about. And, what are some of the trends that you see developing right now because of the shutdown?
Well, we were working on Stranger Things. I know Maria's working on that as well. And we were definitely going for an 80s look, which of course is not the look now. It's shaved heads. And so what do I see in trends coming up? I really think that Netflix has set a new paradigm for the entire business. I think that why go to a movie and pay $20 when you can stream a whole month's worth of stuff for less than that? And they're setting a new paradigm on how things are being produced. They're setting a new paradigm on how we consume entertainment. And more we're going to streaming. I think you and I talked about it, how I see in the future, and that some big conglomerate's going to combine all these streaming services eventually. And just like cable got kind of combined, and so it's going to be there's going to be, I think, so many opportunities, because we have so many different production companies and setting new paradigms on how to produce.
Yeah. Aaron, what about you? What were you working on, prior to the shutdown? And, do you agree with Elizabeth on the trends? And
yeah, we were really kind of, luckily for us, in a lull between things. We were in talks to start up a couple things, but nothing had gone on. I've heard of a couple other projects that we're shooting in Oregon, just got axed for the moment. But our office, we were, really just wrapping up a couple commercials, that sort of thing. And I do agree with Elizabeth. I think we're going to just be doing more and more streaming. All of our big projects of late have been streaming. Trinkets and Timmy Failure and American Vandal, all of it has been streaming. I think it's interesting from our point of, from where we sit, the volume goes up, but the budgets go down is kind of what we've been finding. Do more for less and less and less. But you know what? We've been really lucky that the people that we've worked with have been fantastic, and the projects have been really fun and engaging to work on. So you know what? I'm fine with that for now. Especially, I think the trend specifically around COVID, I think things are going to get really creative for a while. I think we're going to see pretty different style of writing for a little bit. I think that I've heard a lot of talk about fewer extras and fewer day players, and I think that that's probably legitimate for a while. And then I think as soon as people, after there's a vaccine and stuff, then I think it's going to blast right back to where we were, because there's only so many one little person episodes that they can shoot before that becomes boring 9 months from now. But that's kind of what I see. And I totally agree that everything is streaming, and that's how that's all going to go down. Yeah.
And thanks for that, Erin. So, Marie, Elizabeth mentioned you were working on Stranger Things as well. So
I don't know that we're allowed to talk about that, are we?
yeah, I think so. It's out in the public.
It is out in the public. Believe me, I've been there, done that.
Yeah, no, I'm kidding. Yes, we were working on that. We were really jamming hard when everything sort of got shut down. And even when we had heard of other productions shutting down, we were still sort of trotting along at this pace. Like, okay, we're just going to keep, oh no, I have to. And then it was finally like, okay, we really have to stop now, because it really was a matter of safety. We were asking for self-tapes for actors. And when everything was really in the thick of it, it was like, we didn't want to be responsible for asking people to figure out how to self-tape if that meant they had to leave home and hire somebody and expose. So it was like, it was kind of smart to just halt on everything. And I like what Erin said about, we're just going to really have to come up with creative solutions. And I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing or a negative at all. I think that our industry is always growing and always sort of innovative in all these very cool ways. So it's just going to be a matter of all of our creative input together, coming up with some really cool ways of doing things. We're part of something that's really going to be memorable down the line. And I don't know that we will ever come back to what it really was. I think everything's going to be on a much smaller level in terms of people. And
yeah, another question for you, being a casting director here in New Mexico, were you working on not only the Netflix project, but other projects where you saw an increase in casting of co-starring roles, series regulars, things of that nature?
Oh, heck yeah. In the past few years, we've had excellent opportunities to cast series regulars, guest starring roles, all of the above. On just Roswell, New Mexico alone, we brought in Amber Midthunder. Now she's the show. So, that was really cool. Yeah, New Mexico has come light years just in a handful of years. It's really awesome to see. Yeah. And it's well deserved. The actors are seriously kicking butt. We have such a level of professionalism that I think it gives other industries something to really wow at. I'm proud. I'm really proud of the New Mexico industry right now.
I think we all are. So thanks for that input. Nike, what were you working on before the shutdown?
Well, I must say that I was actually in New Mexico for Deadline Hotspot just before we closed down. So I was right there listening to all the things that are happening in New Mexico, and also Netflix's very large input. So it's extraordinary to, shut down so soon after that. Deadline did a great job with that. And just before we shut down, we had luckily, blessedly, finished filming on 2 continents, in the UK and here, All Those Small Things, which is a movie that we produced, Rebel Cat produced and financed, which is the other hat I wear. And but in terms of casting, there was a commercial I was working on, and I just received requests to start casting a small TV series that was going to shoot up here in Washington State. So I had a commercial that shut down very quickly, and then an episodic, and there were other projects that were being talked about, other projects that I was also looking at, just to see where they might land, and they disappeared very quickly. So we were lucky. I was lucky to be in a place where we had wrapped principal photography on 2 continents. We had already done a couple of screenings, and then lockdown, literally, as we were entering into the fuller process of post-production. Casting-wise, no one was going to risk moving forward, even though if you think about it, we've sort of been casting has always had an element of social distancing. And Erin, I'll never forget, Lana, many years ago, just saying, don't hug me, when you come into the room, no need to shake my hand. I see so many people. And I think that casting had already started moving in that direction for lots of other reasons. And I think the face and the process of casting will change exponentially. Personally, I'm not looking at any trends for this year. What I'm doing is just observing the year, doing a lot of reading, watching the back and forth of dialogue and what's possible, because realistically, any production ultimately has to be insured. And I'm working with a team of people. We have a mastermind group, and we're always, fielding conversations and articles. And the main question is insurance and unions. Who's going to take the risk, and who's going to be drawing the lines that say how we practice and create work. So I think for me, the rest of the year is about just observing and listening and reflecting on what's happening.
So that's funny. You were in Albuquerque at deadline right before everything shut down. And did you meet Marie at the deadline? You didn't
No.
meet it?
No, we didn't.
We were both there.
We were both there. Yeah.
On that note, that segueing from what you just said, Nikkei, in this period of observation and seeing what happens, are there new opportunities for casting directors and actors to get to know each other right now, so we can all be better prepared when productions start back up? And I know, Erin, you just ran so maybe we can start with you. You just ran a really successful Meals for Monologue campaign in Oregon. You saw it three times the number of food bank donations. So that's incredible. So are there things that you're all looking at like that, or just what's on the horizon there? I'm starting with Erin.
Oh, sure.
Yeah,
no, we did I think we were all a little surprised at how, we've done Meals for Monologues for years in a traditional sense. And in the last 2 years, I believe that we had added a virtual component so that if you weren't able to come in person, you could submit a self-tape. So we decided to see what would happen if we threw it out there, and the response was bananas. And it was really fun. We asked for lighthearted material. I don't need anything else sad in my life right now. But it was sort of lovely to spend a few nights every night of the week for a little bit watching monologues. And I did find some really interesting new faces and some old favorites that, got a chance to do something different and got to raise a lot of money for an excellent cause at the same time. We've also done some Instagram live talks, where we're just giving actors a chance to pick our brains. Yeah, I think all of that stuff. And we are going to be doing, we've been reached out to by a couple of producers about virtual sessions going forward. And we've done different things with Skype and the like in the past. And we're sort of feeling out a couple of new platforms. So I think we're also going to be doing some more rounds of just generals where we get to kind of test drive some of those things before we're all under the gun for it, which I think is not only a valuable opportunity for us on a technical level, but I think it does the same thing for the acting community, just to keep those tools fresh, and so that it's not a really stressful situation the first time that you get a call from a new setup.
Yeah, awesome. Marie, Nikkei, Elizabeth, are you looking at opportunities like that, or anything of the sort with? I know Marie is teaching classes, and Nikkei, are you still running the Actors Way? Because I remember when I thought about Zoom, I was thinking, Nikkei, you've been running Zoom for a couple of years at least, working on the Actors Way.
That's right. The Actors Way was had two components. There was an in-studio component, and there was also the business of acting tools, toolkit stuff. We did that on Zoom, and correct, we started about 2 years ago. It was absolutely fantastic. Just before shutdown, I've recently relocated to Spokane and my studio as well. And just before, we were preparing to have really ongoing generals, from kids right through to adults, just giving everyone an opportunity for me to see them live, and was really looking forward to that. And recently have been thinking about what would that look like on Zoom. So not just giving actors an opportunity to audition, but I'm very much as you know, Genevieve, the casting director that is really wants to be also giving feedback about what actors are doing and different directions that they can go into. And I think now there's so much need, isn't there, for motivation and input. And so I'm looking at how to do that, on a large scale where people can zoom in, have these one-on-one sessions, or maybe a panel of us watching. So stay tuned.
Cool. Elizabeth?
Erin, I love what Erin said about doing the meals for monologues virtually. I really want to steal that and figure out how to do that as well. That's so smart. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, you are. I mean, you participate with 505 Studio Works with.
Yeah, we've only done it. Well, we did a meals for monologues once, and then we did one that was like meals for pets. So people were bringing in donations for our local animal shelter. And then I personally have done a workshop where all of the proceeds go to one of our local children's theaters, Cardboard Playhouse. And I think last year we raised a little over $7,000 for them. So that's been really fun. I want to continue on that, but I love the idea of doing all of it sort of a virtual. Yeah, so smart. Brilliant. Brilliant. I'm going to piggyback off that, Erin. I'm going to steal it.
Elizabeth?
Oh, I totally am not in that place. I think because I'm primarily do extras casting, I don't have as close a connection with my actors as I know Marie does. So I don't really have those kind of venues. And to my discredit, I don't have those kind of venues.
It's great. Sorry, go ahead, Mary.
I have to disagree. I hear nothing but close relationships from actors who are close with Elizabeth. So
I totally agree with Marie.
I just don't have the venue. I don't, I mean, Marie teaches amazing classes, and somebody asks me about classes, I say, go to Marie. She's way better than me. I mean, she's just.
We'll go in together. We'll do one together, Elizabeth.
Yeah, we'll just laugh the whole time and we'll get anything done.
It'll be great.
Yeah, I think it's a cool thing about New Mexico and Albuquerque in particular. We have an incredible community of actors, and everybody is passionate about it. And, casting professionals here are just as compassionate as well as professional and caring about what happens with the community and want the best for everybody here. And we're gonna get to a few questions about advice and that you have for actors in each market. But one thing I want to ask is, producers right now, directors, I know when they go to different markets, they contact the same casting professionals because they have a great working relationship with them. Is that going on right now? Elizabeth, you and I have talked before, it's like the Coen brothers, they come to town and they're in touch with you about extras casting. So I just want to go around the room quickly and see if there's been any discussions with producers. Have they contacted you at all about when things are going to open up and what that may look like, and any type of, I don't know, new outlook on how to cast their projects? What are your thoughts on what that might look like for some of the productions that come your way? And the answer may be flat out, no, we haven't talked to anybody.
We haven't. We've gotten a little bit of information from our Roswell people, but nothing with any definitive dates. Just sort of the, same storm, different boats, but like we're all just waiting this out right now. And, for safety reasons, nobody can really say, okay, July 1st, we're going to start doing this. So
Of course.
I think we're all in the same sort of limbo situation. Some producers, some casting, we're reaching out to each other, just like, hang in there, it's coming.
Yeah, I think that I haven't been receiving any calls or interest for projects, but what is happening is that there's a lot of conversation about what can be possible and the desire to keep things alive and keep discussions going. So it's less about specific projects and more about we're all in this together, and there will be a resurgence and there will be a comeback. And so there's more of that than actual projects going on. I'm hearing, certainly here in Washington State and in Spokane.
Yeah, I feel it's the same probably around the world right now. I know some companies are getting their plans together about what it may look like opening up, but I think when it comes to actors and background actors, that the communication between producers or production companies and studios that can be passed down to actors, because the actors are looking for the casting directors that they know well for some type of guidance. Self-taping is huge right now. That's the way to go. It's interesting to see how that's working out for a lot of people, but I think that relationship between producers working its way down through casting directors specifically for actors is a really important thing. So you all sit in a really important position, where actors trust in you to give them some type of information, and you always want to give the right information, or no information at all, I guess.
Which is where it's really important, I think, for actors especially to sort of listen to all of the casting directors and all of the casting professionals that they can for that information, because it does get tricky, especially with self-tapes now becoming as prominent as they are. All of us casting directors often have very different ideas of what we want with a self-tape. So, I can yell it and scream it and write it in 17 different emails how particular I want a self-tape sent to me, and never fails, 4 out of 10 will be completely not that way. So I think now is especially the time for actors to really get feedback from all the casting directors, and keep a file, keep a note. When I'm reading for this casting person, I need to do X, Y, and Z. And so right now, especially with the self-taping stuff, is when that's going to become really important to open up those relationships with the casting directors and get to know everyone's different styles as much as possible.
I have a secret to tell you, Marie. Sometimes I teach audition classes, and I sit there and I tell them, when you go and audition for Marie, this is what you do. But if you go and audition for Kira, you don't want to do that, because I've seen all you guys in auditions. And so I'll tell them, okay, all right, this is what you want to do for Joanna. So I tell them the difference between the casting directors, so that they can go in and prepared and understand what your parameters are.
And I think that's a really good point, actually, because I've had actors, thank you for that, Elizabeth, come to me and say, how do you want it done? Because casting director X likes it done the other way, or likes it done differently. And if you think about actors having types, I think that we as casting directors also have types of work that we more or less cast, either in terms of the genre, or in terms of commercials, or in terms of feature films. And I think those various forms of content have different ways of being cast. They really do. I mean, obviously auditioning for a commercial is very different from auditioning from, say, the show that I did, Z Nation, where 90% of the actors, even more, were in series regular roles and local and regional. And the showrunner and those directors were looking for a particular thing, everything from hair type to body type to dialogue to accents. And TV, moves at a great speed, and we had to have actors needed to have that information. So it was a good point. It's a good point that you make, that I think we do sort of, I don't know if we cast differently, but we have things that our producers and our execs look for in the casting process.
I think one of the experiences I've had is that it's very much based on the casting director's personality. Because I audition, but I don't audition that much. But I do watch my friends audition, and they are very different, and they have different personalities. And I think it's important that when an actor is going to go into an audition, they at least do your research on your casting director, see what they've cast, and look at the actors in the projects they've cast, and say, oh, well, they always cast for the Coens. The Coens always, it's less than more, and or they go with another acting director who loves it when people are expressive. You kind of have to know the projects that they cast, because sometimes the casting directors are hired on the projects that they've cast.
Mm-hmm. It's a good time to have an Excel spreadsheet as an actor and track that. I'm an Excel spreadsheet nut, so it works out well.
I think this is a really important topic that you just brought up, and it's things that actors need to keep an eye on, and skills that they need. From all of you, there may be some differences in each market. And, I think Genevieve and I we talked about this question before. What do you recommend, or what can you advise actors to do right now to prepare themselves, for the flood of business that may come once things do open up again?
Yeah.
I wonder if, in some ways, this time is really any different for actors than when they're waiting for a job, right? We've been in lockdown, let's say overall 2 months. Some actors generally are waiting perhaps 2 months for an audition. And so the advice that I give really in terms of preparation is not so different from any other time. And that's practice, practice, practice. And I think it's really, I was talking to some actors who were not motivated. There's a sense of production frenzy at the moment. We should all be doing lots of things. I don't think it's really possible. It's also not tenable. Because I don't think we're producing more that's good just because we have all this time. But I think it is a good opportunity to go back to the drawing board, go back to the fundamentals, doing the basics, practicing with self-tapes, and not giving up. And all those coaching tools, I always say, they're not for when we feel good. The coaching tools and all that information is rarely when we're, feeling on top of the world. It's for now, when we're not motivated. That's when we bring out those tools, and that's when we try and go the extra step in our own practice and process.
And I think each of you would have that same type of advice. Marie, do you think when things open up, the competition's going to be even greater, thus the actors now having to be prepared?
Gosh, I just had this conversation with an actor this morning, actually. I think it's going to the competition is going to increase for a number of reasons, but I think also because there's going to be so many more opportunities for self-taping, and so fewer opportunities for getting in the room, that it's going to be more widespread. As much as we say in Albuquerque, it has to be local hire, New Mexico local hire. We're going to get a lot more people from Seattle, from LA, from Texas, who are like, you have no idea where I am. I will be there if you need me. So I think that the competition will increase that way, in terms of people from all over are going to be able to audition for things kind of all over, if so much of it is on self-tape. But one of the things that I wanted to circle back to that you just said in terms of preparation, and what Nikki said, was self-taping. I think the actors really need to up their game when it comes to making those self-tapes look really good, because up until right now, I know locally speaking, for the local market, some people were like, well, most auditions are in the room, so my self-taping skills can be okay. But now it's like your self-taping skills need to be perfect, and if you're lucky, you'll get in the room. So it flipped right before this, when we were actually working on the project that we shall not be named.
Stranger Things.
That was a really tough one in terms of submissions and self-tapes. And I finally, like a week and a half before we shut down, sent all the agents an email saying absolutely no more self-tapes. If anybody requests it, I'm too busy. There are too many coming in. There are too many mistakes that I can't. It's like it's not physically possible. There are not enough hours in the day for me to juggle this. No more self-tapes. And it was less than a week later that I was like, only self-tapes. I'm only accepting self-tapes. So I was like, oh man, there's an exception to every rule. So it's just going with the flow.
So how are you all handling the self-tapes coming in? I mean, have you added on staff? I mean, are you able to do that, or are you handling everything?
We have to handle everything. That's, as they say, they want more work for less money. So yes, bringing in more people isn't necessarily an option. More hours in a day would be an option, but.
And I wonder, Marie, what the room looks like when we go back into process. I mean, literally, what does that room look like? Is there a room? And I just think self-tapes are going to be, I think self-tapes will not just become the norm, but they will become part of the callback process in a way that I can't imagine at the moment. And so, becoming familiar with self-tapes, and I know that I was never a fan of them as a casting director. I know my actors never were. But I think it's the thing to remember is that you don't need a whole lot of expensive equipment. I need to be able to see you. I need to be able to hear you. And if I see you deep into the work, authentic with the character, then I'm going to be engaged with you. But too many actors, I think, feel they've got to get hung up on really expensive equipment and what have you. And that is not the case.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we always say, put a solid sheet behind you and use your phone, just set it on a pile of books. So it's a steady cam. It should be, it does not have to be an expensive endeavor at all. And I think you're absolutely right. Actors definitely there's this whole other school of thought that you need to purchase lights and sound equipment and microphone. And you really don't. You need a quiet space and someone who can read opposite you. Mm-hmm. And that's about it. Yeah. We want to see you. We want to hear you.
One of the things, a couple of, when I used to get self-tapes from doing the TV show, some of my actors, perhaps from LA, would do a full-on production. I mean, they would shoot on location. There'd be a boom mic. I mean, they would edit. They'd put it through post-production. And I always say those actors actually were not more likely to get the role. In fact, far from it. The producers, the networks were actually more interested in someone who was just in a studio or in their home, bringing the character to life. Full-on productions for a 3-minute audition did not make me feel any more. The work wasn't necessarily better just because the production values were greater.
I like to tell people, like, your only job is to nail the character. Wardrobe has a job, the makeup department has a job, the prop person has their own job, the set deck, all those jobs have already been allocated. This is your job interview. So when you start adding all these other elements, that might be so far from what the director or the producer has envisioned that, you are less likely to get the job. Maybe you nailed the character, but you had everything else so off that it took everything away. We just really want to see you. So, yeah.
And, on that note too, we have in the Filling the Void audience, we have people who are directors and producers and up and coming and just runs the gamut. Do you have advice for them right now? Is this a good time to get in touch with you and figure out what the process looks like now that, it's this lull for everybody? What's the opportunity there for collaboration so that they can, be prepared to hit the ground running with you all as casting directors?
My email is always open to anybody. I will respond to almost any email that comes my way. So
Cool.
They can reach right out.
Erin, what about you? Are you doing any collaboration at all with?
I mean, it's a little tricky. I think like we're similarly accessible. Like I'm happy to chat about basic process and that sort of thing. Like it is such a tricky time, I think, to really make any concrete steps, especially if you're an upcomer, you don't have like a solid game plan. Like I'm happy to read a script and talk with you about what that might look like in the future, but I think we're still a ways out from actually, engaging in anything. But we're always here and happy to chat.
Cool. And go ahead, Elizabeth.
Well, I think, I was reading an article about Netflix. They've already started shooting in some countries. They're shooting in Japan and South Korea.
Right.
The countries that have sort of already gotten over their waves. And things are, like you said, they're writing the scripts down for smaller scenes. Everyone gets tested, the entire crew, the entire cast gets tested before they step on set. They get their temperatures taken every morning. So I think that we already have some models that are starting to emerge from those processes. But I agree. I think they're going to be much smaller scenes than they would normally, much smaller crews. But you got to remember, this is really temporary. Even if you're talking about a year, which I don't think it will be that long, it's going to come. It's going to happen. And I really think that there's this creative energy because we're all creative people and we're just all ready to burst out. We're like, we need to express this creativity, the whole reason we're in this industry. So I really feel like actors out there need to be excited, and they need to be excited about their careers, because we're going to have lots of good opportunity, and it is a time that they can tape themselves over and over again and have somebody else look at the tape, not just yourself, and tell them, well, does that feel natural? Does that look natural? So I think that there's, I think every day is a new opportunity, even if it's not manifesting itself right away.
Good point. And adding to that, there's some really good questions from the audience. I think we answered several during this conversation about how to prepare for auditions, clips or reels to send in. Self-tape, it seems like it's going to be the way to go. What do you suggest in terms of clips or reels?
Yes.
Yes to both.
Yes, all of the above, I think, is going to be really smart going forward. Reels are always great, but clips are really nice. If we're looking for a specific genre, we can sort of just go right to those clips. And sometimes reels freak out new actors who don't have a lot to put on a reel. So put up a clip, put up anything that really, spotlights your strong points, whatever that is. So yes.
Yeah, I would agree. Clips, if for whatever reason it's not possible to get a reel together, there's not enough content, price points, doesn't work for you, then I think clips are great. And also clips are a great opportunity to do some fantastic scene work with a partner, very simple, or obviously, perhaps not right now, but even monologues. Yeah, it's a really good time to do some clips.
Yep. Erin, what are some good resources for those actors that are just beginning their career?
Do you mean like right now, specifically in this climate, or just in general?
I think probably a little combination of the both.
Sure. I think it's probably a really good time to get connected with the online community. I have to imagine that New Mexico's got a similar kind of setup to the Northwest up here. I honestly think that actors in regional markets have a hand up in terms of getting in. I think it's easier to get on the Facebook pages and stuff and kind of start throwing yourself in the conversations. And I think as long as those folks are open about where they're at and that they're starting, I think there's a large chunk of people out there right now who are just looking for people to play with,
Yep.
even over a Zoom room. and and I know there are still teachers teaching. Like I always say, oh, you want to get into acting? Have you ever taken an acting class? No? Well, go back there. Like, start at the beginning. So I'd reach out to the acting studios that are local to you and the community in those online spaces and start building your network that way.
Yeah, and I know that Marie, you offer an acting class that is one of the top, here in New Mexico. So, I suggest everybody, sign up for your class, if they're beginning actors.
Thank you. Yeah, and it is a self-taping class, but I wanted to just go off of what Erin said, that a lot of times that stuff isn't feasible financially for people. So participating in any of the panels or the Zoom panels that you can watch, there are so many opportunities to really learn from other people without having to fork out a ton of money. And that's one thing that bothers me in our smaller, more regional markets, is often we do get these sharks who come in and try to like scam all of the newbie actors, and it's only gonna be $800 and then I'm gonna put you in this movie, or it's like, just be very careful. Don't pay to work ever. If you can't afford a reel, like Nikkei said, put up clips that you have. If you can't afford headshots, find someone who can take one really good picture of you, and it's just baby steps going forward. But yes, obviously you need to train. You can't just jump right into it. And of course we have all of those people who email us with, but I was in this really great X, Y, and Z. And it's like, yeah, everybody was. What makes you stand out? So, and it's also following the right protocols to get in with particular casting professionals or productions. It seems like I get a lot of unsolicited reels, or watch my independent film, or I'm going to send you $8 Amazon credits so you can buy my movie and watch it. And while all of that sounds really smart on the actor side of things, on the casting director side of things, I have 2 kids at home. I don't really want to sit at my computer 24 hours a day watching. I always like to say, if I knocked on your door at 7 o'clock at night and showed you pictures of my kids on the trampoline, you'd be like, what are you doing? It's like, oh, well, that's my passion. You're not interested. So it's knowing the right time and the place and the right venue. It's not just suddenly, shaking down every casting professional's door with all of your information.
Right. Another really cool question, I'm sure all of you get questions about what actors need to do in the beginning. There's a cool question that came through. What advice do you have for someone trying to start their career as a casting director?
Well, I've been at this almost 18 years in New Mexico. I've only recently converted my CSA status to casting director. I was associate for a while and now I'm casting director. It's a really long process. It's also, we're a very small market. So like you said, when the Coen brothers come, they go to Elizabeth, they go to Joe Edna and I. Black Label, when they come with their projects, we know that they're going to come. So there's our relationships that are already built. So be very careful, tread lightly. Also, we're a very small community. I love Elizabeth. I love Kira. I love Kathy. It's like we all have, Angelique is awesome. She was at my wedding. We have a really tight, beautiful community. So if you're going to come in, you need to do that delicately and sort of know where you're treading. And it's like, if you're the right person for the job, you'll get the job. But really, there's just enough work for all of us, as much work as there is right now. So that's a tough one. I can't give good advice for that for New Mexico.
I think on a practical level, though, if they're asking how do you start being a director, just sort of educationally, then it would make sense to get in touch with a current casting director and ask to begin to shadow them, just as you would with any internship position. So that would be the simplest and most direct way. And then in terms of what Marie is saying, you get to know the market, you get to know the possibilities, you get to know, what it takes to become a CSA. And I've been involved with that, with people that think they want to be casting directors, and then after a little while think, well, maybe it looks nicer or more glamorous from the other side than it actually is. So my suggestion would be, if you're interested, find a courteous way of approaching, a regional CSA or regional casting director, and see if you can shadow them.
Everything in the film industry is done by mentorship practically. And that's how I got in. I was mentored in. And to get those relationships, sometimes it's just luck. It's like, and also it is a very delicate place to tread, because we have worked incredibly hard. We have worked 18, 20-hour days for years, decades in my case, to get where we are. And for somebody to come in and say, well, I want to be a casting director, it's like, well, do you even know what we do? Do you even know how many hours a day we work? Do you know how to talk to a producer and negotiate contracts? And they have to be mentored in. And I get probably 2 or 3 times a week somebody asking me to mentor them in. And it's very difficult for me, because I want people to be successful. But first of all, I don't have room to do that. We can only have one person, and they have to be somebody we know and we can depend on, who we know is going to come through for us. So it is a very, very difficult thing to get into. And a lot of it is just being in the right place at the right time.
Yeah, totally get it. Another question that just came through. What's the best advice that you have for a person of 50 plus years old wanting to start in the business for the first time?
Take classes. There's room for, there is room for every actor in our business. We need babies and we need super old people, and 50 plus, great, bring it on. You just have to, what Erin said, you have to take the proper steps. You need to start somewhere. So age doesn't really, make a difference if you've never done it before. Start with background work, get in there, see if you like being on set, if you can handle that sort of the stress and the direction, and move forward. We often get, recommendations from Elizabeth or Lori or the other, background casting directors. It's like, God, this person's really good. Or we'll reach out and say, listen, we need a bartender. I know you've had 4 or 5 bartenders on this show. Do you have any that you really think can deliver a couple lines? Yeah, I really think this guy's been working really hard. We all work together. So,
yep.
Yeah, 50 plus, 40 plus, 90 plus. There's room.
Here's another interesting question. It's difficult to get new professional headshots during social distancing. So should we shoot our own headshots, or should we use older professional ones that still resemble our current look?
Well, that presumes that people are being asked for their headshots currently, that there's work currently. And there isn't. Not that people aren't being asked for their headshots. So I would just advise not to worry too much right now, and ebb and flow with the market. Eventually, as Elizabeth says, that's going to open up. And rather than investing in making changes now when things are so much in flux, stay with what you have. If you feel that you really need a new headshot, I think there's an opportunity to experiment with what that might look like with your own looks. But I wouldn't invest right now in getting a whole new set of pictures done. I would just be okay with waiting and seeing. But it's still possible to use this time to think about what headshots would look like, what your look is, what your type is.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for that.
I will say, so like on that note, I agree. It's totally not the time for the big investment. It is important to me though that that your picture on the website or whatever that you're submitting through is accurate. Like, for example, on this last commercial we cast a couple weeks ago, a guy lost a part because he self-taped with hair, and then I went to put him on hold the next day, And I got the message back that he had like tried to trim up his hair a little bit and it had gone badly, and then he was bald, and then the producer, like, that didn't work for what they were looking for. So I like, if you've really changed something dramatic and you know that there's a project happening or that kind of thing, I think it's worth just a good selfie. We all have camera phones that are, you know, capable of doing something. I like to know who we're considering.
Also, just to like put this myth to rest, but casting directors are actually human. So if a casting director is requesting your headshot and you say, listen, here's the one I was using a year ago, I was meaning to get new ones and this happened, send a selfie. We're not going to be super angry that you're so unprofessional that you had a selfie during quarantine. We're human. We're going to be like, sweet selfie. I like the cat in the background. Like, moving forward, we're all weathering this storm together. So
I'm going to send all of you a selfie of me, like with the bed head and everything, in case you need like a homeless guy in any scene. Next question, it says, for Elizabeth Gable, has there been any bigger or wilder set in New Mexico since The Lone Ranger? And thank you for being such an awesome person to work with. I don't know who that came from. It didn't give a name.
Since Lone Ranger, no. We literally had extras doing stunts on Lone Ranger, and and getting caught in the the horses, and there is nothing compared to Lone Ranger. I worked for a year on that show, and it was insane. Gore Verbinski is a wild creative. Let's just put it that way.
And I think we have time for a few more questions. This one, since we have evolved to more people having a social media presence, do you as casting directors ever make decisions for actors based on social media videos?
Give an example. I mean, like a YouTube channel or something?
Yeah, I don't know if they've created an actor's channel or if they're asking, hey, do you go check us out on social media, and making a decision on whether you want to cast us or not.
I can think of two kind of instances where this might have played in. Like TikTok seems to be the up and coming platform right now. And we did work on a commercial before all of this where they were creating like a channel for a company, and it did end up being beneficial that the person they cast came with some following.
Right.
But that is a very specific little thing, is like 23-year-old rapper. Like that's, if you're a 50-year-old newbie to the industry, this is probably not going to be your entry point. So don't stress over it. It's kind of like, if that's your jam, if that's what you're doing, that's fine. But I think that I've seen some actors like try really hard after that. And if that's just not who you are, I don't think that's going to be your foot in the door. And I will say there was on a different swing, I can't even remember who the client was for, but they ended up not booking an actor because of some political comment that was made on his socials years in the past. So I do think it's not that you need to censor yourself, but you do need to be aware that when you're posting on the internet, that it's a public space and that a client has a right to not book you based on something that you did there. In that particular instance, I did not believe I felt like the actor was in the right, but the company's prerogative who they book ultimately.
Aaron, we've been in that boat in the past, when we're sort of I'll say working with Joanna, she doesn't even use social media, so that's a but I do. I'm on social media, and it's like, oh, have you heard of this person? And it's like, oh, I have heard of that person, and they say some really horrible things about women on their Facebook page or something. So it's like, we're not obligated to see anybody, and I'm not going to bring anybody into the room with me who I might be afraid of or is, I feel could be threatening. So yeah, you don't need to censor yourself, but you should definitely be be aware that that stuff, my mom always taught me, don't pull in anywhere you can't back out of. So there you have it. I personally don't accept friend requests from anyone I don't know on a personal level on Facebook, just because that is my place to share political beliefs or children on trampolines or whatever it is. So it's my personal space.
Yeah, I'm not usually, I don't require or look for actors that have social media profiles or channels or anything. But it's like Erin said, I will have producers that want someone who has a significant following. And in those instances, I will, look online, look on social media. But really, I'm looking to see a particular bracket of people and what their following is. So yeah, sometimes I'll be asked, to look specifically for influencers, YouTube influencers, or yeah. But I don't think I would go to that venue to that arena to look for actors or expect actors to have that as part of their portfolio.
It's more of I think this comes up for actors in terms of, it matters more that you're posting appropriate stuff on social media versus having some big presence, just,
Yeah, I would much more that their online profiles are up to date, frankly, whatever they use, Actors Access, Casting Frontier, the other one, I would much sooner, Casting Networks, that those profiles were full with clips, with up-to-date headshots, with up-to-date resumes. That information is pertinent. That's where I live as a casting director.
Absolutely. Time for one more question? Should we do one more question?
Yeah, let me try and find one more question that came through.
Okay.
Oh, here's a great one. We're a diverse community, of course, within the film industry. Are there many roles for actors of color? Seems like all of the opportunities I see are typically male, female, or child, and white. I think it's an important topic to cover when it comes to casting directors. I know the casting directors they open up their casting to everyone. And I think that maybe a question more about projects that, open it up to more diverse than just white actors. I know that I'm actually producing 2 projects that are one Native American, the other one African American. Yeah, I think the projects are out there. I mean, I'll leave the answers off.
We always say in our office, like, may the best actor win, like, if it's for you, it's for you. And we basically follow the parameters of a breakdown, if it's, from the director or the producers, as much as we can. But that's sort of the creative process for the casting directors is, well, what about, we've got this really great, this person or that person. So I think it is project specific, it's like we are the state of Westerns, where it's like, anybody with any color in their skin whatsoever has basically can't be in a Western from the early 1800s, and neither can a woman of any color. So it's like, now that changed. Then we all were, working on The Harder They Fall, which was actually an African-American Western, which was really awesome. Suddenly our old white cowboys were like, well, wait a minute, what about me? And it's like, oh, sorry, not your turn. Somebody else's turn now. So a lot of that is based on writing and sort of what the genre is for the film. But in terms of our office, I can say that we do our best to really bring anybody in.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a huge one, this diversity, and for me, it's not just about race and ethnicity. It's also about gender, sexuality, that whole spectrum of identity, non-binary, gender non-conforming. I think that might be another filling in the void podcast for me, to be honest. It's impossible to speak to all of those things. I think as a casting director of color, as a female casting director of color, certainly I can see attempts being made in all those areas, but it's not as it's not always as easy as it looks, actually. The casting director with the best will in the world will support her region. I know that for sure. And make all sorts of suggestions in terms of gender, race, ethnicity. But ultimately, the buck stops elsewhere.
Yeah, great information.
That's perfectly put.
Can I just add something really quick there? Because we have been really, really looking for more ethnic participation. I mean, we really want it. It's something we all want. And whenever, unfortunately for New Mexico, we have a very small African American population. And we're always saying, oh, get in the pipeline. We want you in that pipeline. We're looking for you. And so I really try to encourage you if you are interested in that. Just keep pushing on just keep pushing, just keep working, just keep self-taping like we've talked before, because there is a demand and there is a definite need. There is a real need for it. And as a casting director, we really want that. So yeah, please submit, be there, get in my face. That's fine. We're good. We want, be nice about it, but we want it. We want to see you. We want to.
It makes our job easier when we have more of a diverse talent pool to pick from, to audition from. So it is important. And yeah, Elizabeth's right. Oddly, this particular industry in New Mexico, we don't have a huge ethnic diversity. And often producers will say, well, we want more of X, Y, and Z. And it's like, we've literally seen all 7. That's all we can do. We're trying.
Right. Because the ask for diversity is so new. It hasn't always been authentic, but the ask is so recent. And we have to understand that, there haven't been the educational opportunities. So that, diversity has not been in the pipeline of production. And so to suddenly be turned on by whatever it was, Black Panther, and now it's a new age in terms of diversity, is a little bit naive because there's no one in the pipeline. It's a recent thing. And so, when our communities of diverse communities do show up, they're not necessarily as well prepared as the execs or the producers would like, and there isn't the range. As you say, Elizabeth, there's 7 people of color when a producer wants closer to 107. Well, 107 people haven't been given the opportunity to even step into that arena for too long. And so we're at the beginning of that journey, I think, of really populating our films with cultures and peoples of color, different sexual gender orientations, and so on.
And it seems like maybe this self-tape world that we're all entering into. I know somebody had asked in the chat box, and I think we covered this already, that we're really headed toward a self-tape future. So maybe that will expand when we some erasure of geographic boundaries for self-taping and pulling in actors from other area who can.
Well, I think that part of the dilemma comes at a much higher level than we're at. Like in my experience on our bigger productions, that there's real desire for diversity, like absolutely. And I think that's genuine from the tip top, but there is still a tendency to, bring in the big guest cast from LA, Caucasian, and then that means I get to fill in my 5 and under with my, and we're very similar Caucasian region, where my really excellent African American actors get asked to be a waitress again, when I'm like, no, wait, could we have flipped this ask? It's like, I'm with Nikki. This is a bigger conversation, I think.
Yeah.
We'll put it on the agenda.
Yeah.
Filling the void. We have plenty of more episodes to go, I think. Closing thoughts. We were talking about just having everybody just kind of close with your one piece of a resource or a tool that you found, or just a closing piece of advice for the actors and producers and directors who are listening, other filmmakers?
This has stayed with me. I don't even know if it's to do with acting, but it's to do with someone who raised 40 million for the National Health Service in England for our wonderful workers right there on the front lines, our first responders. This was a 99-year-old man called Captain. He's now been made a colonel, Tom, who had a hip replacement in England. And in order to raise money for the National Health Service, he decided to do laps with his Zimmer frame. It's a walker around his garden. And he thought he might raise £1,000, this Captain Tom, and he raised 32 million for walking around his garden with a walker. 99 years old, he just turned 100. He got 140,000 cards. The Royal Air Force flew over his garden when he was 100 years old, and he was made a colonel. And I just thought, wow, what can't I do? Here's a 99-year-old man with a walker who decides to raise the profile and raise money for, our doctors. What a symbol of what's possible in lockdown. And that stays with me. So, Colonel Tom.
Thank you, Nike. Marie?
It's hard to follow that one. So, that was awesome. No, I would like to give a big shout out to all of our first line responders right now, and our nurses and our doctors and all of those folks who are putting themselves on the front line for us. So, on that, in that vein, wash your hands and stay home.
Elizabeth?
Well, I agree with Maria. Thank you to all our wonderful first responders. And as for actors, I love Nike's shirt. I love her. It's just breathe, relax. Don't get panicked when you walk into an audition. Unlock your knees. Let your shoulders relax. Love your craft. If you love your craft, going to an audition is a wonderful learning experience.
Yeah, thank you. And Erin?
Yeah, I just echo, thank you so much to all those folks, the doctors, the nurses, the people still selling groceries and pumping gas, like all of those unsung folks who are still going to work and helping our communities. For actors, I think there's like a sort of a torn sense of like urgency and this need to fill this time in this space. And I think that ultimately what you can really do that is best for you now and at the end of the day is take care of your mental health and whatever that looks like for you. Take a walk. If this stuff feels fun and joyful, go for it, play. But if it starts to feel like work and stress, it's not worth it right now. Like it's just, I don't think that anything you're going to accomplish by some labored Zoom session or whatever is worth it in the long run. I think it's time for some deep breaths and some gratitude lists, and we'll all still be here on the other side of this, and what you've done and what you've not done in the next 3 months or 6 months isn't going to be a deal breaker.
Yeah.
Great piece of advice. And I just want to thank Genevieve personally, because her move to New Mexico, or back to New Mexico from the Seattle area, she and her husband Terry, she contributes so much when it comes to the entertainment world, whether she knows it or not. And her thought process and ideas really bring people together. And there is a way during this pandemic and the stay home orders to do networking and building new relationships and filling the void, thanks to Ben Andrews and the Seattle Film Summit, have brought AFMX together with their organization to present this. And, the coming together of people from 2 different regions like this, have created some amazing friendships and future collaborations, even though the people have not met in person. So I believe the same can happen for, actors and, casting directors. You never know if a project's going to be shot here in New Mexico and the producers and directors say, we need to take 2 weeks of this up to Seattle, and Elizabeth or Marie can contact Aaron and Nike, and away they go. I think the power of networking is really phenomenal. And Nike, we actually did meet at the Deadline Hollywood event,
Oh, okay.
briefly, and I think it was a quick hello and if you're a casting director, but now that we're face to face virtually, it really sets in my mind that I should have taken advantage more at that conference to really have deeper conversations with everybody that I came across, no matter how busy, I was in helping Deadline with some logistical things. But, just we appreciate you so much, the advice that you've given for actors. And I think for the other community members who are tuning into this in New Mexico, Seattle, and from around the world. We do have some phenomenal shows, so make sure that you're sharing this with your friends. We're going to have the full episode available, on our YouTube link. And next week's episode is going to be really great because we're bringing 2 filmmakers from Washington and 2 from New Mexico to pitch their projects to producers who are going to give them feedback, and we're going to try and bring investors and other people on board to watch and tune in to take a look at these projects, and hopefully we can direct people in getting some funding. So continue spreading the word about the show. This is a really cool one, I thought, because there's a lot of questions out there about what's happening to actors and what it's going to look like for auditioning when things do open up. So all the valuable feedback that you provided, greatly appreciated. It was so nice having everybody on as guests. And I'm going to let Genevieve close us out for this episode.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Ivan. Thank you all for taking the time to be on the show. And is there anything else you want to say to each other, or any other thought you have before we close it out?
Elizabeth, I'm so glad to see your face. I miss you.
Miss you too, Marie.
It was nice to meet the other 2 of you.
Nice to meet you as well.
Everyone.
Thank you.
You are all awesome, and I just want to let you know, as an actor and as a person, how much you've all touched my life in a lot of ways. I remember taking an advanced class with Nike, and you talked about how what we feel like are our weakest points are usually the points that we need to embrace and realize are generally our strongest points. So thank you for that. And Marie too, you're always saying, you're enough when you come into the room, and just really appreciate it. And I remember getting started in the business way back in the day in New Mexico, and Elizabeth, you cast me in something that just really got me, excited again about acting. And Aaron, it was great to see you in November, and you're just always such a gracious, warm person. And you all mean so much to our acting and filmmaking community. So thank you all for taking the time to be here. I don't know where I'm looking at the Zoom screen, and I know I'm not looking at the right person. It's like you're all at the opposite corners. But I really appreciate it. Thank you all for
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for listening.
Thanks for having us. Nice to meet you all.
Yes.
Oh yeah, subscribe everybody. The Todd just came on, and I don't know if you all heard, but
that's our voice of God.
Yeah. Todd just reminded us to ask you all to subscribe. So we are official with the YouTube channel. It's youtube.com/fillingthevoid. So you have that link always. It's where we have our live episodes every Thursday at 12 Pacific and 1 p.m. Mountain. And then it's where we keep the recordings there too. So.
And he just brought up the link for submissions. So we do take submissions on ideas for future shows, although we have 8 weeks lined up. But we do love to hear from the audience. So it's fillingthevoidsubmissions@gmail.com. And we're going to continue growing this thing, bringing people together to collaborate, learn, enjoy stories, just we thank everybody once again, including sponsors and our guests for today's show. So thank you again. We'll see you next week, 12 p.m. Pacific time, 1 p.m. Mountain time. Thank you, Washington. Thank you, New Mexico. We'll see you next week.